Hey now! Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Today is the Listener DMs episode. Today's actually going to go a little differently than a Listener DMs episode typically does. Normally, I would have the great Anna Almeida here in studio with me, and Anna would read the questions that you have sent into my inbox. However, Anna's not available today. She's got a live broadcast for the radio station that we work for, Light 92. So she is off to do that, which means I'm doing it old school. Like how when I launched the podcast, it's just me. So I'm going to read your questions and your comments on this episode. I'm going to weigh in on them, and I'm going to try and squeeze as many of these in as I can. Before I get to the DMs, though, a couple of things. Number one, I'm sure by now you've heard the Supreme Court has decided not to hear the case about saving those ostriches on a BC farm. I actually got a request this morning. Somebody messaged me and said, Scott, before you talk about the ostriches, could you give me a heads up? Because I haven't stopped crying. This is your heads up. I'm going to talk about the ostriches. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I feel guilty on some level that we weren't able to do more to save those ostriches. And I vehemently disagree with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, with Mark Carney, and with everybody else who was involved in this decision. Not the least of which, Canada's Supreme Court, which continues to be a colossal disappointment this week, between saying that mandatory minimums for child porn viewers is unconstitutional, and now not even agreeing to hear the case about the ostriches. I think there's a lot of reason to have a healthy amount of skepticism about the true intentions of our Supreme Court. There you go. Letting those animals die. Actually, not just letting them die, executing them by firing squad. Apparently, there were gunshots throughout the night in British Columbia. And, you know, in addition to the ostriches, I'm thinking about the people who ran that sanctuary. And I'm thinking about all the people who have put their lives on hold to go and protest what's happening on that farm. Killing 300 healthy ostriches for no good reason other than ideology is sick. And I am embarrassed right now to be Canadian. And the rest of the world is going to judge us as hard as they possibly can for this. And frankly, we deserve it. I am disgusted at what's happening with those birds. When it comes to the budget and when it comes to floor crossers, I talked about this at length this week. Wednesday was the episode, I believe, where I did the budget coverage. And then yesterday, I talked quite a bit about the floor crossing member of parliament from Nova Scotia. Now, another update, another Conservative MP has resigned. I don't know the whole motivation behind Giroux, whatever his name is. I don't know the whole motivation for him stepping down. And frankly, I don't care. I want people in Parliament who are principled, who believe in the arguments that they're making at the door, and who are going to fight for a better Canada. And if you're not 100% committed or you're wishy-washy on your ideology, bye, get out. We need strong people based on the time that we're in, because it is not looking good. I know the media is absolutely eating up any scandal that involves the Conservative Party of Canada. Having one member quit and another one cross the floor, they are all over this, and they are taking a victory lap on it because the mainstream media hates Conservative politicians. For the most part, most of them. They're loving this, and they're letting the federal government get a complete pass on a budget that should be very, very consequential. This is, in the same way that Mark Carney promotes it as a generational budget, it is a generational budget. He's absolutely right. The problem is I see it from a debt lens and from a recessionary lens, because I think that that's where we're going, straight into a recession. Apparently, our credit rating may be downgraded now. Fitch is the latest credit agency to say that they're very concerned about Canada. Our dollar is below 71 cents US. Nothing good is coming here. Nothing good, as I see it. And I don't see anything that can stop the budget from passing now. The New Democrats say there's 7 members of parliament. I don't know what they're going to do on the final vote on the budget, but yesterday they voted down a Conservative motion to reject the budget. So the NDP is in the tank for the Liberals once again, and they seem to be buying people off. How they're doing it, I don't know. That's just a gut feeling that I've got. And we have some weak-willed politicians and weak-minded politicians in there that are going to take the bait every single time. They're opportunistic, and I think it's gross. Nobody changes their political ideology in 6 months. Nobody. So I'll leave it at that, but depending on how the questions go today, I might jump back into that. Let's try and keep it positive. These are not all political questions today. So let's get into this here and have some fun on a Friday. First off, this one is from Alex. Hey, Scott. On your listener DM episode on Friday, can you explain how it works for a country to be in debt? Who are they in debt to? Alex, thanks a lot for that question. I appreciate you listening. As far as I understand it, I've asked this question myself. And I actually had an economist come on a few months ago and try and explain it. Basically, we owe the money to bondholders. When the government wants to raise money, they sell off bonds. And people buy bonds because you get a good return on investment. You get some interest that you make on top of it. Now, you got to leave the money with the government for a while, but eventually you can sell that bond at more than you paid for it. Well, it's the Canadian people that need to reimburse that bond and the interest. So when we are in debt, I believe they say now it's going to be over $2 trillion by the time we get out of this fiscal cycle. We owe that $2 trillion to the bondholders. And some of those bondholders are other countries. Some of them are regular folks that are just investors. But that's who we owe the money to. Next one up is from Josh. Scott, I did a little experiment with $100 and 2 different grocery stores. I wanted to see if I could get everything I needed for $100. Mark Carney said to judge him by the prices at the grocery stores. He wasn't my vote, but much like you, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt as well. Based on my last grocery visit, my judgment is a failing grade. Love the pod. Thanks, Josh. Josh, thank you. I think that everybody agrees on that, and it doesn't matter what your political stripe is. We all need to eat. We all go to the grocery store, and we can all see that the prices are out of control. There's a couple of different schools of thought on why that is. Some people feel it's corporate greed. The grocery companies are making out like bandits. Some people feel this is the fault of the farmers. Other people feel it is pressures on the market, on the industry. And you would hear someone like Pierre Poilievre, for example, argue that the industrial carbon tax, the tax on packaging, and all of the other things that go into it is actually behind the higher grocery prices. However you feel about what's causing it, what we don't disagree on is solutions. Mark Carney said he would fix this. He said he was the guy for the job. There have been liberal panels and task forces and all sorts of things over the last number of years to try and study grocery prices, and the price has not come down. That is a promise not kept from the federal government, these grocery prices, and I don't think there's any other way to see it. The grocery prices are ridiculous right now, and people can't afford this. But Josh, I appreciate that note. Thanks for taking the time to write in. This one is from Jeff. Hey, Scott, I need some advice. My in-laws have a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. My in-laws help a lot, and I don't want to upset them, but I feel like it's becoming unhealthy. They're retired and just filling their days with CNN and hate toward Donald Trump and everyone who supports him. Thanks for your time. Happy Friday. Jeff, I get that question, I think, more than any other question. How do you talk to somebody who disagrees politically? How do you talk to someone who has made up their mind about who they like and don't like and doesn't seem to want to compromise on that or hear the other side? Here's what I can tell you, Jeff. I have found that a compassionate approach is the best way to approach these topics. And I don't think you need to shy away from it unless you're at a family gathering or over the holidays. I don't think we need to talk politics around the dinner table this year. But that's not to say we can't have a conversation. Clearly, your in-laws help you and your family out a lot. I guess they watch the kids or do whatever. That's great. If they are coming up with a case of Trump derangement syndrome, ask yourself why that is. Well, you said it yourself. They do nothing but watch CNN all day. You know, there used to be a time, and older folks remember this time, when you could turn on the news and in an hour or half an hour, you would be completely informed. You would know what's going on in the world. You would have seen what your president or prime minister is up to. You would have found out what the sirens in your neighborhood were. It was a good way to get informed. Well, the media, through a series of different events, mainly acquisitions by big companies, has become extremely left-wing. They don't present a balanced argument, particularly on the news. In Canada, we've got a really bizarre setup where, for example, our national nightly newscast, The National, on CBC, the one that we all pay for, is actually only about 25 minutes of news, and then the rest of the hour is just filled with filler stuff and special interest pieces and stuff like that. And when they do the news, it comes to you from the lens of someone who is likely very left-leaning. It was written that way, it was delivered that way, and it's done that way to try and sway public opinion. Old people don't understand that, though. That's the problem. I have the same issue in my family. I've got parents that are the exact same way. They're convinced that Donald Trump is the devil on earth, and they're convinced that they're up to speed. They know everything that's going on because they watch CNN and because they watch CBC. I just want to point out for them, and if you want to play this part of the pod, please do. I mean, for them. Go ahead and do this. When you watch the mainstream media news, and I'm talking all of it, you're getting a very distorted view. If you only watch CNN or CBC, you get the news, quote unquote, delivered to you from the lens of a left-leaning broadcaster, written by a left-leaning producer, and from a left-leaning corporation. It's the exact same thing when you watch Fox News on the right. That is delivered to you by someone who empathizes and supports President Trump. That is someone who has right-leaning ideology, for the most part. I'm generalizing here, and there may be other examples where it's not true, but for the most part, the news has been fractured into left and right. They believe that if they super serve an audience that's already got an ideology, that's going to be better for them in the long run. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. Fox News is losing viewers. CNN is almost unwatchable at this point. Their ratings are really, really bad. And that's meant that people have gone to other sources to get their news. If you're an older individual, a boomer, as many of them call you, many of us call you, you should seriously look into other sources of information. I know that you'd think you can watch The National every night, or you can throw on CNN for an hour and know everything that's going on. But the more you explore other sources of information, places like this podcast, and I've got a bias too. I'm a conservative. What I say comes to you from the lens of a conservative, but also from the lens of someone who is a true member of the middle class. And that's really what I care about above ideology. I just want what's best for the people. If you go to alternate sources of news, digital media, social media, places like that, places like this podcast, I find you'll get a better, more well-rounded perspective on the news. Not on all of them. Some podcasts do have an ideology. I try and play things, for the most part, down the middle. But not all of them do. So you've really got to ask yourself if it passes the smell test. You know, you could watch the news just last night, and when we should be talking about one of the most consequential budgets in our history, generational investment means generational debt. The media is not holding the federal government to account. In fact, they spent more time last night trying to make Pierre Poilievre look bad than they did covering a budget that is going to leave our grandkids in debt. And I can't understand how our mainstream media can completely abdicate their responsibility just because of their political ideology. But that's how it works. And the more, Jeff? Yeah, Jeff, the more we help older folks and those who have been corrupted by the mainstream media understand that they're not getting the whole story. They're not necessarily being lied to, but everything they're seeing is being skewed. Point out examples to them so they can see it for themselves. And eventually, once you show someone the light, then they get curious and they want to know more. I think that's the only way to help convince people that what they've known their entire life isn't true. There's so many examples. How many more do we need to hear? The government told us for years you were crazy if you believed in UFOs. And then one day, just randomly out of the blue, they decided, oh, yeah, that's totally real. Yeah, everything,'s fine. Did we say you were crazy? Oh, we didn't mean that. Yeah, there actually is aliens, stuff that we can't explain. There's a great example. There's so many other examples. The fact that we just got the JFK and MLK files released not that long ago, within the last couple of months since Donald Trump came into office. The fact that we now know the government itself was behind it. Well, that's completely contrary to the story that the media shamed people for not believing for decades. Eventually, the truth comes out. And if you buy into everything you see on the news, hook, line, and sinker, you're not completely informed. And I hope that you can keep that in mind. And thank you for trying out this podcast. And Jeff, thank you very much for sending that note. I appreciate that. Let's keep going through. This one is from Jordan. Hey, Scott, just having a conversation with my grandparents. This year, they're considering buying dog spray and personal alarms for my kids, their grandkids, as an extra bonus Christmas present. Maybe this is something you could highlight in Friday's listener DMs. It's a growing concern for many of how they're going to defend themselves, but also another conversation as to how people can legally protect themselves. The conversations I had was around what's legal and what's appropriate for use in a hostile situation. Never did I ever think I would hear from my kids' grandparents that they're buying us items to defend ourselves for Christmas. Jordan, well, that is a tough one. Thank you. And isn't that sad? How sad is that? It's amazing that grandparents are thinking about the safety of their grandkids. But how sad is it that their first instinct is, maybe for Christmas this year, we're going to have to buy the grandkids some bear spray. That's illegal, by the way. And I don't understand why. I'm not 100% sure why. I know they consider it a weapon, but unless you use it aggressively, I don't think it is a weapon. So I think you should be allowed to carry around stuff like bear spray, just in case, God forbid, you get confronted and someone tries to carjack you or kidnap you or any of the other horrific things that are happening here in Canada. But at the moment, those things are not legal to carry around. And I'm not 100% sure why. If the grandparents want to buy something to keep the kids safe, my advice is technology. Make sure that they've got a tile or an AirPod or whatever it is. What are those things from Apple called? AirTags. That's what it is. Make sure they've got an AirTag and they keep it on them. Put it in their coat pocket or something like that. And that's not for surveillance. It's just in case, God forbid, something happens so that you can find them and track them. Carrying around items that are illegal, a lot of people do it, and I don't blame any of them. If you're carrying around pepper spray or bear spray for your own personal protection, I can't fault you for that. Because it's a dangerous world out there, and our government really doesn't seem to care. And the police really don't seem to have a handle on this situation. Tough one, surreal. Christmas 2025. Grandparents are going out to buy bear spray for their grandkids so they can protect themselves. Listen, they could get into a lot of trouble carrying that, by the way. So if they do, my advice is to keep that completely on the down low. They don't show anybody. They don't tell anybody. They just have it in case, God forbid, they ever need it. Good message, though. Thank you very much. Next up, this is from Hugo. Hey, Scott, it's unbelievable the way politicians talk empty words and expect that people like us will just believe it. It's so frustrating. We work hard and we're still struggling to pay our bills. Hugo, it works. That's why they do it. They've gotten away with it. If you're in government right now as a federal liberal, you've probably heard the words from Catherine McKenna. If you say it and you repeat it and you say it louder and you insist that it's true, eventually people will believe that it's true. Think about the brainwashing that's gone on over the years. How many people truly believed that they got back more money from the carbon tax than it cost them? And then lo and behold, one day, Mark Carney came along when he was in jeopardy of losing an election. He did cancel the consumer part of the carbon tax, and now it's all but confirmed. It was costing families more, and we all knew it all along. But there's so many people that believed it because they heard the government say it, and the media never challenged them on it. It's frustrating, but this is why politicians do it. It is a low risk, high reward scenario, especially if you want to implement an agenda. You just lie and create these word salads. Trudeau was so good at it. He was a chef when it came to making a word salad. He was good. And people believed it. And when the media isn't calling it out, that's how we end up with so many people believing propaganda from the government. This one is from Greg. Scott, I swear, I try not to get heated about politics, and I appreciate the pod and the great information that you provide, but I'm getting irritated. Carney keeps blaming the U.S. for our problems. When are liberals going to understand that is just BS? How can anyone look at the budget and think we're going in the right direction, spending so much money after we've already watched the country flail in misery due to overspending for the past 10 years? And worst of all, these BS floor crossings. Why is it that when a conservative representative abdicated their seat for Poilievre, it required a by-election, but an elected official can just decide to change parties on a whim? Our federal elections may involve citizens voting for their candidate, but it is largely understood that you vote for the party whose leadership has the policies and ideas that you align with. If that's true, how can a floor crossing not trigger an immediate by-election as well? Greg, I've been talking about that this week, and I agree with you. I think it was shameful what that D'Entremont guy from Nova Scotia did. It had no character, no integrity, and I think he's full of it. Like I said, back in the spring, he ran as a conservative. Everything about him was cheering on Pierre Poilievre and conservative ideology. Now, all of a sudden, it's all about liberal ideology and Mark Carney, someone that guy has criticized ad nauseum for months now. It's not right. It's not what voters voted for. There should be a by-election, but unfortunately our system doesn't work that way. It should. It'll take some political courage, and I hope eventually the next government will address that. But until then, we're stuck with the system we've got, as unfair as it is. I don't even think it's democracy at this point. You know, we elected a minority Carney government. The fact that they could end up with a majority just because they're real sneaky isn't fair. It isn't right. And it allows them to implement an agenda that the majority of Canadians voted against in the last election. It's the opposite of democracy, but they're going to wrap themselves in the flag, tell people we're fighting for Canada. They're going to get people all pissed off at Donald Trump again, and they think that'll be enough to justify spending this kind of money. I'm also a little concerned when it comes to the budget that the goals here are not achievable and that we aren't even going to try and achieve them anyway. I'm really worried about giving this crop of politicians that much money to just slush around. You know, I'd love to be able to give our elected individuals the benefit of the doubt, but it doesn't seem like anybody's investigating what's going on. And I've seen it for the last 10 years, how much money gets wasted. So much money gets wasted on dumb stuff. Like, think about it all. The Arrive scam app. So many scandals over the years. I'm not even going to bother listing them all. You probably know them. You can probably think of a couple off the top of your head. All of that was money that we worked hard to make. Ottawa took it and wasted it. I think that's wrong. Crossing the floor should require a by-election, and that's all there is to it. I got a two-part message here from Sophia. Hey, Scott, longtime listener. A couple of weeks ago, you mentioned a restaurant that you like to eat at in Buffalo, and you recommended it. I can't remember the podcast or the restaurant, but I'm heading to Buffalo, and I may try it. Could you remind me again? Sophia, thank you for being a longtime listener. There are some real amazing people that have supported me through 6 different radio stations now and 3 different incarnations of this podcast. So thank you. Loyalty is an undervalued quality in someone, and I want to let you know that if you've stuck with me, I appreciate the hell out of you. Thank you very much. That restaurant, actually, you know what? I'm going to do a couple because I do love Buffalo as a diehard Buffalo Bills fan, and I'm there fairly regularly. Everybody who goes to Buffalo should at least one time try the Anchor Bar. That is the home of the Buffalo Wing, the Anchor Bar. Now, the Anchor isn't exactly that great. It's a place you should visit. It's historical. It's neat, but it's not necessarily the best wings. If you want the best wings, you'd want to go to Duff's. Now, the restaurant that I spoke about just a couple of weeks ago is called Fat Bob's Smokehouse. It's on a little side street. It's a small place. Highly recommend you make a reservation if you're going to go there because it fills up quick. But I got to tell you, the brisket, the smoked chicken, everything on the menu is fantastic. And when you're in there, it smells amazing because they are smoking food in there. Fat Bob's Smokehouse. It is very close to the Peace Bridge in downtown Buffalo. Enjoy if you're going, and thank you for listening. Here's the second part of that. Scott, thank you for your knowledge about our government. You definitely make it easy to understand the news. I wasn't even sure if I was a liberal or conservative. Over the years of watching these liberals ruin our country, I can definitely say I'm not that. My dad was a hardcore liberal, but I had him listen to your podcast a couple of times, and he was like, yep, I agree with Scott. This government is nothing but thieves. Thankfully, he voted conservative in the last election, and so did I. Thank you again. I love the pod. Sophia, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you again. Let's move on. This one is from Shannon. Scott, this is more of a vent. I work in retail. It's scary to see what's happening in Canada. I had a woman come in and hand me a resume. She's 33 years old and just got laid off from RBC. Even the big banks are making cuts now, knowing that we're going to have to sacrifice more so that the government can spend more. Every day, we are fighting to make our sales in store, as the Canadian economy just has no more money, and yet our government is wanting to spend twice the amount. As I sit here and I think about all of this, I'm really worried for my future and my husband and our future family. We have a mortgage to pay and bills, and we have to keep a roof over our head, and we're barely making it by, as my husband works in the auto sector and I work in retail. We're scared of what the future may hold. Shannon. I mean, you just said it. You just nailed it. There are so many people that are worried about where this is going. How can Canada sustain itself when we're that far in debt? When we're spending $60 billion a year just in interest on our current debt, and the government wants to rack up double the debt? How can we keep going like this? I mean, anybody who's ever balanced a checkbook or sat down and looked at their family finances, they understand that you can't do that. The country doesn't seem to have those same restrictions, though. The people running it anyway. We have a choice in front of us here, everyone. We can support this budget, and then there's no going back, because once the horses are out of the barn, you'll never get them back in. Once that money is spent, we will never get it back. People have floated a theory to me, and if you don't mind my sharing it, I have nothing to back this up on other than it's a rumor I consistently hear from a lot of folks, that the government is trying to bring us to our knees. You might recall that way back in the spring, during the federal election, there was an article published from someone that has a pretty close tie to Mark Carney. And he said Mark Carney is going to win the election, and then shortly after that, he will capitulate to Donald Trump. Well, he's been doing that. I mean, that report from way back in February, if I'm not mistaken, turned out to be spot on. But are we on a path right now where we are just going to spend as much as we can now, get all the nice stuff we need, and then declare bankruptcy and become the 51st state anyway? Some people feel that what we're going through right now is actually a controlled demolition. I have nothing to base that on, but a lot of people feel that by design, our country is being turned into a hellhole financially, that the economy has got to get that bad that they can justify an eventual alliance, whatever that looks like, with the Americans. I don't know if it's true. Like I said, that's the third time I've said it. I don't know if that's true. And typically, I don't repeat stuff if I don't know it's true or I haven't personally verified it. But a lot of people feel that way. I hear it a lot. I read it a lot, that this is a controlled demolition. And Mark Carney is really only the guy because he's the one who's going to manage our descent into eventually becoming American. Spend the money now, build the infrastructure, build those natural gas refining plants, build the pipelines, do all that stuff so that when the Americans take it over, they've got a clean slate to work with and everything they need is already built. Is that where this is going? Is Carney who he says he is? Are his intentions legitimate? We'll see. This one is from Marco. Hey, Scott, any updates on that possible alien mothership that you talked about on the podcast? You mentioned that we should know what it is by the end of October. Marco, great question. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that. We're talking about here 3I Atlas. 3I Atlas. That's an object in space that is coming toward us at an incredible speed. They say it's a comet, but they're only tentatively labeling it a comet because we're not sure what it is. It should be a comet. What else would it be? But it doesn't have the same characteristics of a comet. The tail, so to speak, is on the front. Marco, you asked for an update. I've got one, actually. Turns out 3I Atlas, just in the last 48 hours, has increased speed. It was heading on a path toward the sun. It was speculated that if it got to the sun and decided to pivot or change direction, then it must be an alien ship because it's being steered to go around the sun or to maneuver around the sun. Well, it hasn't really been steered, but it did pick up speed. And it's tough to explain why. Some feel that it could have been the sun shedding one of its outer layers that created a burst of energy, and that's what sped it up. Some people feel it could be wind in space, giving it a little extra wind in its sail and making it go faster. There's also people, though, who feel that if it is an alien ship, it just turned on the jets. It fired the thrusters. It did whatever it is it does to propel itself even faster. It is still on the way. Last I heard, in and around the 18th of December, it should be in our immediate area at the speed it's going now. But if it's speeding up, that could even happen sooner. What is that thing? Why is it emitting light from the center? As if somebody's got the lights on in this mothership. I don't know. I'm really not sure. I'm open to every possibility, but I am still watching this thing all the time. My son sends me regular updates on anything he learns about it. And right now it's traveling at about 154,000 miles per hour right towards us. It should be here in just over a month. Fun stuff, but kind of scary stuff too, right? Oh, and by the way, before anybody accuses me of spreading fake news or misinformation or disinformation or anything like that, 3I Atlas is not a conspiracy theory. It's absolutely real. In fact, with a half-decent telescope, you can see it from Earth. If you still don't believe that, go to NASA and read their studies on it. There's a whole section on 3I Atlas on nasa.gov. Look into it. Don't take my word for it. Study it. Feel free to learn about it, but either way, we're going to be talking about that more over the next couple of weeks. Going to move on to the next one here. This is from Brandon. Hey, Scott, huge fan of the pod, and I want to ask you. So they released the budget yesterday, and now they're going to go on a break because of Remembrance Day. If we have to vote again, I think Mark Carney and his team should pay for the election. They can't do the job. Stop giving away our money to other countries. Help Canada first. And Scott, you keep up the good work, bud. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people that agree with that. So there you go. Should the Liberals pay for another election? Probably not. I think it's a dangerous precedent to set that if anybody does anything that triggers an election, they have to pay for it. I think that that's probably a little unfair and probably a little anti-democratic because it is going to limit who could run in those elections. But either way, I agree with the sentiment. It turns out to be a colossal waste of money. Now, I don't think we're going to be voting. A week ago, I was maybe 60-40, 70-30 on we're probably going to have an election. It wouldn't have been the doom and gloom scenario for the NDP that the mainstream media is trying to convince you it would be. Some people have said, Scott, the NDP don't want an election because they don't have any money. Okay, well, think of it another way. They don't need money to promote 7 candidates. If they get 8 of them elected, this was a massive victory for the NDP. They're going to get free media coverage, earned media, like crazy, because they're a recognized party in the House of Commons. It's not crazy for the NDP to want to fight a federal election right now. There's also a lot of folks, if I'm being honest here, that really want to see the NDP do better. There are liberals, maybe even some listening to this pod, that are ready to rip up their Liberal Party of Canada membership and go full-blown to the NDP. Because there's a lot of liberals, mainly the ones on the far left, that have had enough with Mark Carney. They liked the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney is governing a little more centrist. He's a little closer to not a conservative. I know some people are trying to make that jump. I personally don't see it that way, and I don't think any conservative would have put out the budget that Mark Carney did. But he's certainly a lot more conservative than what Justin Trudeau was. And some of the folks on the left wing of the Liberal Party don't like that at all. They want a progressive party running the country. So they're going to turn their vote back to the NDP. I think the NDP is stupid for supporting this budget and again making it seem like they're in bed with the Liberals. It makes no sense. Also, the Conservatives have lost 2 members this week. So that means Carney just needs 1 vote. Technically, at the moment, Elizabeth May and the Green Party hold the balance of power in Canada. And that's kind of shocking if you ask me. But either way, I don't think it would have been a bad idea to have an election. I think a lot of people on the left have changed their mind. Some of them are going to go to the Conservative side. Some of them are going to go to the NDP side. I think it's not the scary situation we were in the spring where people thought Donald Trump was coming to take our country. So I think that it would be a very different result if we had an election. But I'm also very aware events from this week do not help the argument for change right now because the Conservatives have got some stuff to clean up. You know, when you've got somebody crossing the floor, even though I think it was shady and slimy, and I think that there should be a by-election, either way, that's one less person voting with them. Then they had somebody step down yesterday. That's another issue. When it was only 3 votes that you needed to change the trajectory of Canada, I was hopeful that maybe we might have an election, but now at the moment, I don't think it is likely. I think this budget is probably going to pass, and I think that that's a crying shame. And I think that when we end up in the financial situation that I anticipate we're going to be in, you should be looking at the anchors and talking heads on CTV and CBC and social media and everybody who tries to tell you they're providing coverage and they're giving you news, but they're actually giving you a spin to try and prop up the government rather than holding the government accountable. I think it's been sick what's been happening here. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Marshall says, hey, Scott, hope you're doing well. Any update on Irina K's murders or the men in Muskoka firing guns? Thanks a lot. Love your pod. Marshall, thank you. To be honest with you, no, I don't, but I did put out a plea for more information on both of those. Last I heard, a couple of arrests had been made for the guys that were firing guns up in Muskoka, but I don't know where that investigation stands or if they're still looking for other people. It's amazing to me because the entire thing was caught on video. I don't know how we didn't get more of these guys. A couple of them have been arrested and charged. I think we're still looking for more people. As for the Irina K murder, I don't have any new information on that, but I did put the ask out there, and when I get something back, I will share it with you. This one is from Hunter. Hey, Scott, thank you for the informative podcast on the federal budget the other day. You mentioned concerns about Canada's future as a country if this budget goes through. In Friday's pod, I was wondering if you could elaborate on the implications of a country becoming bankrupt. Would this put Canada at risk of becoming the 51st state? Hunter, thank you for asking that question. This is something that keeps me up at night. This is part of the reason I'm as passionate as I am. But I'm also aware that I am not an economist, and I'm sure there's some economists out there, academics, trained in our wonderful brainwashing universities that will tell you it's impossible for a country to go bankrupt, Scott. It can't happen. That's not real. They'll tell you stuff like that. But that's not true. That's simply not true. Right now, the way I see it, Canada owes a hell of a lot of money in bonds. A hell of a lot. They say now it's going to be over $2 trillion by the time this fiscal cycle is over. $2 trillion. And on top of that, we're paying $60 billion this year in interest. We're paying more in interest on our debt than we spend on health care. And we're just going to continue the spending. We're going to dump a ton of money into buying new military things. Planes and subs and boats and probably tanks and all sorts of other stuff. That comes at a price. We're spending a ton of money on a ton of different things, and I think everyone understands that when you spend more than you make, that's not sustainable. And the same applies to a country. What do you suppose would happen if Canada defaulted on its debt? What do you suppose would happen if whoever owns the majority of Canada's bonds decided we want to cash out? this country would go bankrupt almost instantly. Economists say that's not true. That can't happen. It is true, and it could happen. Then what would happen if Canada can't repay its debt? If we get to a point where the interest payments are so unmanageable that we can't spend money on the core services that support people. Imagine we have to spend so much money paying down we're not even paying down the debt. I mean, just paying the interest on debt. Right now, it's at $60 billion a year, more than we spend on healthcare. What happens when the interest is $100 billion or $150 billion? Are we going to be able to pay our military? Are we going to be able to pay for police officers? Are we going to be able to pay civil servants that keep the country running? Maybe not. What happens when those bondholders want to be paid out? Then what do we do? Well, then we need to borrow more money to pay them off. And frankly, we can't keep printing money because our dollar's almost worthless as it is. We're getting down into peso territory here. Then we need somebody to come and bail us out. Someone who will take on the payments. Could we become the 51st state? The answer is an emphatic yes, we could. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people who feel that's actually what Carney is doing. That's what the plan is. Buy all the niceties now, run up a whole bunch of debt, and then declare bankruptcy. Sorry, everybody, you're not getting paid back. And by the way, we're moving. We're part of America now. So send the bill to Trump. And he's not going to pay it either, just so you know. Could happen. It could. If anybody wants to weigh in on that, though, I am hyper aware that economists in particular are very, very defensive of this government. Economists and bankers are the ones who like to disagree with me the most. We'll find out soon enough who's right. We'll find out for sure. But if you want to go ahead and correct me, if you want to weigh in, tell me what your credentials are and why I should listen to you, slide into my DMs, and I will certainly entertain whatever you have to say. But in answer to that question, Hunter, yes, we could essentially become bankrupt. If we can't meet our debt obligations, then we will essentially be bankrupt. If we can't keep up with our interest payments, we'll essentially be bankrupt. It's the exact same thing as if a person owed that much money. And by the way, we've got no reserve to dip into. We have no gold in our reserves. We sold it all when Trudeau got elected. He sold it all to the UK and other places. We have no gold in our reserve. There's no backup plan. Nothing. Maybe we're going to have to sell off the CPP. Could we do that? How many families are doing that? They've been putting aside money, saving for the kids' university fund, and, well, the bill's got to get paid right now, so I'll repay that university fund eventually, but right now I got to take the money out of that and use it to pay the hydro bill and my car payment. A lot of families are doing that. The last stop before bankruptcy is going to be liquidating the pension plans. Man, oh man, I wonder if boomers would change their mind once the pension plan is bankrupt. Interesting. One more. This one is from Megan. By the way, I know in this episode you're hearing papers shuffling around and some background noise. It's just me in the studio today. It's just me talking to you. No Anna today. I am reading these on my own and trying to do this as one person. So I apologize if there's any distractions in the background, but it is what it is for today. Megan says, Scott, as someone who just bought a house, I had to move to London to afford it. I'm a teacher. I make pretty decent money. But to actually settle down, I had to get out of the GTA. The hope was always to save enough money for a rental property here when my boyfriend moves out this way. He has a condo in Scarborough, so he's stuck there. We don't want to rent, but we really have no choice unless he wants to eat $100K or so. It's not an ideal situation, but we are lucky to have stable jobs compared to most people's jobs. Also, as a teacher, okay, this is going into another part. Let me just say something. It sucks that you're in that situation. It sucks that your boyfriend is going to have to sell his condo at a loss. That was very preventable, by the way, when our government, as a knee-jerk reaction, went crazy on the housing crisis and said, build, 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 and all they built was condos. Now we've got so many condos that you can buy one today and move in on Monday. It's ridiculous. The value of those condos is going down for everybody. And that's wrong. They got screwed because we went too in on the condos and we did not accurately assess how many people were even interested in living in a condo. So that's a problem. Part 2 of this message from Megan. Scott, as a teacher, could you speak about the crazy level of violence in classrooms? It's become unreal. with everyone being integrated into rooms. The level of education has gone way down. We have kids who should be in specialized programs like ASD or Downs or extreme behaviors. So many boards have gotten away from them. I feel like the amount of harm is unreal now. Teachers are being told to teach through a kid destroying their classroom and to not escalate it further. I had a student who would attack me and choke me. Every time the response was, "What did you do to make that happen?" It's unreal that education is becoming such a violent joke. We got a new student yesterday. She has already thrown a water bottle and took chunks out of the ceiling. Then, when you order something for kids, we have to pay crazy amounts because we have to use the school's vendors. 4 simple plastic bins for sensory stuff made in China. $190 plus, and that was just for the 4 bins that you could get anywhere. It's ridiculous how the money gets spent and forced to people, ripping us off left and right because of ASD student diagnoses. And the same with our class orders. Duotangs costing us $30 for $25, but Staples sells them for 10 cents at other times. Oh, man. I knew it was bad, and I know that it is bad, and I know that the government is just absolutely awful at procurement, and I do think that there needs to be a common ordering system, and I think we do have more buying power when we do it that way, but I hate it when we do it that way, and I find out we're still getting ripped off. What did she say that was? $30 for 25 Duotangs? Get the hell out of here. We're paying that? Listen, government is absolutely atrocious at this stuff. They're terrible. And I don't just mean the federal government and the provincial government. I mean any government body. They're not efficient in any way. I'm a huge fan of the voucher system. I think that that's something Ontario and all of Canada should do. And it's a very simple concept if you've never heard of it. When your kid's born, they're going to get a voucher for every school year between JK and high school. And the parent can decide where that kid is going to go to school. And if a school wants to open up that caters to kids that are gifted and they want to study STEM and stuff like that and specialize in that way, as long as they follow the Ontario curriculum, you could do that. If you wanted to open up a school with an religious affiliation, maybe you want to have a Jewish school. Yeah, you could do it. And if a parent wants to send their kid to that Jewish school, they can use their voucher at that school and they don't pay for it. If you want to send your kid to one of the many private schools across the country, you could do that. And maybe the private school charges more than we charge for public school. Maybe you've got to pay a little bit out of pocket, but either way, the equivalent of the cost of the public school would go to the private school, and bam, you've got your kid in a much better learning situation. This whole, you got to go to school where you live, and you got to use what the schools are given, and the schools have got to buy from certain suppliers, and we know the suppliers are ripping us off, but it is what it is. It's only taxpayer money. The whole system needs to be reimagined, and we could make it better. We absolutely could if we treated schools the same way we treat anything else. Make it competitive. Treat it like a business. And you know what? If schools have to compete with each other to get your kid's voucher and get that kid coming to their school, you watch how quickly those schools try hard to get good teachers. You watch how much they pay attention to things like their Google reviews. You watch how important it is to them that kids are doing well academically, because that's one of the first questions a parent's going to ask is this school performing well at teaching kids? Everything would get better if we were on a voucher system. John Tory, when he was the leader of the Ontario PC Party, he proposed this and the taxpayers said, no, we're not doing it. We missed an opportunity, and an entire generation of kids have grown up in a public school system that doesn't really work that well. It could be better. There just needs to be a will to make things better. I would love to be part of the change. I would love to see all of this country thriving. I really, really want to see it do well. It just seems like we've got people in power that like the status quo, or they're making money off the status quo, and they're not interested in improving things. They're just interested in keeping the taps of money on for them personally, or power, or perks, or whatever it is that motivates them. That's going to do it for me today, friends. Have yourselves an amazing weekend. I can tell by the DMs. Again, there's a lot of people struggling out there. There's a lot of people that are angry out there at our current system. And you know what? I'm glad you're angry. I'm glad you're concerned about the direction of our country. But I just want to leave you with this. Don't let it consume you. Don't do it. Don't fall into that trap. It is real easy to bring yourself down or to get yourself all hot and angry or what have you because of the news events that we can't control. And we can get back and talk about the politics and stuff on Monday. We will here in the pod. But try and enjoy your weekend and try and not get too consumed in this negative news cycle that we're in. Enjoy the weekend. Be with family and friends. Have a good time. Have a drink. Eat some food. Do whatever it is you do that makes you happy. Just resolve for the next couple of days. Take care of your mental health. Take care of you. Try and be happy. Choose to be happy. And then we'll get back into the news cycle on Monday. And I hope you'll be right back here listening to Scott Fox After 9. I leave you now with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now.